So I'm going to start the live streaming again. And I'll wait for notification from our staff that we're restarting. Okay, members of council, we are back to live streaming. So we will be rising from the closed session, and I do have a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that council adjourn the in-camera session and that council do now rise with report. Members of council, I'll call the vote. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item arising out of closed session on a motion by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that the Chief Administrative Officer be and is hereby authorized to undertake the directions provided during the in-camera meeting of June 15th, 2020. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries. And we will now return to our regularly scheduled program. The next item on the agenda, members of council, is agenda item 12.2, which was moved down to be considered prior to 12.1. So this is the report from the Ombudsman of Ontario. I have a motion from Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that council receive the report from the Ombudsman of Ontario dated June 2020 for information. Mr.
Okay.
Mayor?
And before we discuss these items, I'm going to step down as chair, and I will appoint Deputy Mayor Councillor Hildebrand to be in control of this, to run this meeting from here to conclusion.
So, Mr. Chair, Councillor Hildebrand.
And Mr. Cork declared a conflict.
Councillor Kaur, will you be vacating the meeting at this time?
Yes, so I'll just touch the red leave button, that's it, right?
Yes, to vacate the meeting? Yes.
Yes. Thank you and have a good night.
Good night, Councillor.
Good night.
So, Councillor Hildebrand, you can call for discussion on the motion. This is with regard to the Ombudsman's report.
Prior to the discussion, I'd like to make a general opening comment because I believe it's vitally important that everybody understands where we are and where we're coming from. I thank everyone for the opportunity of chairing this a very important part of the meeting. I would like to inform all who are live streaming and those who are listening that the town's website is an excellent source of council highlight and news. With the addition of our council meeting being live streamed, town staff also compiled highlights of each council meeting and uploaded to our website. These highlights include links to the full agenda, the full council video, and the highlights of each meeting and corresponding reports discussed by council. You can subscribe to town news, including council highlights, by visiting www.pelham.ca/news and click the subscribe button. I believe tonight we have an opportunity to observe this council as it addresses transparency and accountability before the public. It's not what I would define as our finest hour and the news I want to talk about. I would sooner be talking about residential hydro rates, balanced budgets, and etc. With that being said, the services of an integrity commissioner and the Ombudsman office were engaged by this council in early 2019. Ontario's Office of the Integrity Commissioner was established to maintain high standards of ethical conduct in the Ontario Public Service. It is independent of government, striving to encourage and sustain a culture of integrity and accountability. The Ombudsman report and initial investigation by Mr. Paul Doobie and Robin Bates, and the Integrity Commissioner's initial investigation and report by Mr. Michael Maynard, under the direction of Mr. Edward McDermott, the town Pelham's Integrity Commissioner, were professional and thorough. I would like to publicly thank them for their assistance and advice they provided, as I spent considerable time in discussion with both officers, as I'm sure everyone on staff also did, and council. Tonight we have reports from both offices to discuss. I would like to also note that each councillor is elected to represent their constituents, and the mayor, like councillors, has a single vote. To make decisions based on facts, not opinions. I served on the Niagara Region Audit Committee for 8 years, from 2010 to 2018. This committee found it useful and informative when we provided each party an opportunity to present a short opening statement if they so desired. I sent out an email Saturday night to advise them that I would be providing them this opportunity tonight. So at this point, Mr. Mayor, would you like to provide an opening statement before we go into discussion on the Ombudsman report?
Yes, I would. Thank you. First, I want to read an email that I got from that I received from a taxpayer resident in Pelham. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. The next installment on my property tax bill, excuse me, is at the end of June, and I will not be able to pay it this time, as I am still not back to full-time work. As you suggested, I will call the town clerk to discuss my situation. The above is an email I received from a Pelham resident on June 9th, 2020. I can't begin to imagine what his reaction will be when he reads this week's paper and discovers how this council has spent $18,430.30 of his money. I am embarrassed to be connected to a council, much less head of a council, which has paid this amount of money to have the Integrity Commissioner and the Ombudsman pass judgment on what can only be described by any stretch of the imagination as frivolous complaints. It is beyond belief that in this period of time of such a devastating pandemic, when unemployment has skyrocketed and many taxpayers are facing the loss of their businesses and or their homes, that this council has been forced to deal with such trivial accusations. I have written an article that will appear in The Voice tomorrow, in which I have apologized to the residents of the town for any part that I have played, either through miscommunications or lack of not knowing the rules of the Municipal Act. I've had many hours of talking with the Integrity Commissioner and the Ombudsman, and quite frankly, I've had enough. I am not going to participate in any more discussions. I am now going to bid the council and senior staff that is left good night, and I will see you on the meeting of July 13th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would, at this point, like to read a statement sent to me by Mr. Court. Good evening, Mayor Junkin and fellow councilors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to make a statement tonight. During the 2018 election, I based my platform on fiscal responsibility, transparency, and the need to make decisions in an open and honest world. To this day, I have held myself to those standards. Although not an easy decision, my campaign main reasons for lodging the code of complaint are as follows. To protect the integrity of my fellow town councilors, all of us, including the mayor, ran on a platform of honesty, integrity, and transparency. We all said that we would make decisions that would impact our community in open forum. However, the emails from the mayor indicated that he did not want to discuss the $25,000 donation of CanTrust to be discussed in public. As written in the email from Mayor Junkin on January 9, 2020, because this discussion did not fit the criteria, it cannot be discussed in camera. And it was decided, and I perhaps really would not want to discuss this in open session. So just once, we would make a decision by email outside of council. This was neither open nor transparent and went against mine and my fellow councilors' oath of office. Point 2. One of the major issues in our community is the cannabis industry. Mayor Junkin's email undermined the hard work of our Cannabis Control Committee and also disrespected all the residents that had lodged complaints against CanTrust with regards to the disgusting smell and the pollution. I am in no way against making our town a better place to live, but accepting a $25,000 donation from this company and doing it without proper public debate was procedurally incorrect. Also, we have to remember that CanTrust and the town are locked in ongoing litigation, so the surrounding this donation was wrong. Both the Ombudsman and the Integrity Commissioner had the power to dismiss the complaint on the grounds that the mayor did not breach any policy or procedures, but they did not do that. Mayor Junkin had over 70 days to inform council of his attempts to solicit a $25,000 donation from CanTrust and donations from other cannabis companies in the community, but he failed to pass this information on to council. Mayor Junkin had ample opportunities to admit to procedural missteps and improper actions from the time he learned of the complaint until the final report was completed. However, he did not. He had the opportunity to end this early, but he did not. In closing, I know that this has been difficult for those involved. I trust that the decision you make will help the mayor to observe and adhere to policies and procedures and rules established by council moving forward. Ron Core, Council. As I noted, I gave each one of these individuals a chance to address them, as we did when we had meetings on the Niagara Audit Committee. And I believe that it's useful information to provide us where we are today. Tonight, I chose to address the Ombudsman report first. I believe that all the details are addressed in the Integrity Commissioner's report. However, I will leave this up to fellow council members to provide a motion or request more discussion on this report. So do I have a motion, or would council prefer to have more discussion on the Ombudsman's report? Councillor Hahn.
I have a general statement to make, but it's, I guess, a combination of the Ethics Commissioner and Ombudsman, so perhaps this is better suited to discussion under Ethics Commissioner. So I'll take a statement at that time.
Thank you, Councillor Hahn.
So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, you do have a motion on the floor to receive the report from the Ombudsman for information.
At this point, is there any more discussion to be held? To Madam Clerk, are we prepared to take a vote?
Seeing no further comment on the Ombudsman's report, I can take the vote to receive for information. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand. I'm sorry, I'll call you last. Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Hildebrand.
Yes.
The motion carries. Through you, Mr. Chair, Deputy Mayor, do you wish to consider a motion to extend curfew? We're about 5 minutes to 9.
Yes, I would like to consider a motion because I'm believing we need more than 5 minutes to complete this meeting.
Thank you. So I have a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink, that the rules of procedure as contained in the Town of Pelham procedural bylaw be suspended, and that the specified curfew meeting time of 9 o'clock be and is hereby waived, and that the remainder of the business listed on the agenda for this meeting continue to be considered until all matters have been concluded. Is there any, do you wish to call for discussion, Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Is there any discussion on that point?
So I'll call for the vote. Councillor Hahn. Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes. Sorry.
It's okay. And Deputy Mayor Hildebrand.
Yes.
The motion carries. Mr. Deputy Mayor, the next motion for presentation is by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that Council receive ADR Chambers Integrity Commissioner Office's closeout letter and final report dated June 1st, 2020 for information. I'll turn the meeting over to you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for that opportunity, Madam Clerk. I think it's important that each one of us list and talk about the issues, because we've all spent a lot of time discussing with the Integrity Commissioner and the Ombudsman Office. And there's many points that the Integrity Commissioner listed. And I think it's important that each one of us state what our position is with regards to that report. Do I have someone that would like to proceed first? Councilor Wink?
So based on the Integrity Commissioner, he did considerable amount of investigation and came up with some recommendations. He noted that all the complaints that were provided was not sufficient. So for example, name calling and whatever, but the Integrity Commissioner did find that there was essentially 3 breaches of the code of conduct. Members shall seek to advance public interest with honesty. That was one of them. In hindsight, we probably should have brought this forward to council. There was recommendations that we don't discuss this and that it does get brought to council in open session. That never happened. Members shall refrain from making statements the member knows or ought to know to be false or with the intent to mislead council or the public. That was another one of the Integrity Commissioner's finding. The other one was members shall not directly solicit funds nor receive funds for charitable purposes in their role as a member. So he cited that as a breach. The Integrity Commissioner made comment that there's 2 courses of action that can be made. One is a reprimand, and the other one is suspension of remuneration paid to the member in respect of his or her services as a member for up to 90 days. The recommendation by the Integrity Commissioner indicated that there was an error in judgment rather than a nefarious design, and he suggested that the mayor receive a reprimand from council for the code contraventions. My question at this point would be to the CAO, what does a reprimand entail? What is that?
A reprimand, excuse me, is a formal statement whereby you officially adopt a position of condemnation. So it's, you would draft potential negative character, you make a finding of negative behavior and call it out as such and indicate that it's unacceptable and that it's not to occur again. So that's fundamentally what that item is and what would be and to expect what the Integrity Commissioner is recommending council to do.
Okay, thank you.
You do it by way.
Sorry, I didn't catch all of that.
Sorry, you do it by way of motion, so you would do that this evening.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wink. Would one of the other councillors speak to the issue, please? Councillor Hahn or Councillor Stewart?
Yes, I've got some comments to make. While I understand there was nothing nefarious about the mayor's solicitation of funds, I do agree with the Integrity Commissioner report that it was not the mayor's place to do so. Had this been discussed with council when the Ban Shell Committee approached us for temporary funding, this in all likelihood would not have become an issue. We could have left fundraising solely to the committee, possibly offering guidance. We could have discussed whether as members of council we would participating on their behalf, and if so, set parameters for businesses and or community groups to solicit funds. The troubling part for me is that there had been no public discussion between the mayor and his fellow councillors. Last year, council had made a decision that we would not accept any funding from cannabis companies, at least until such time as they prove themselves to be good corporate citizens. At this time, they do not meet the criteria, as they have not mitigated their negative impact on our community, and add to that the fact that they are currently litigating against us. It feels to me that this issue would not have come to light, save for the fact the Ban Shell Committee was planning to come to council to update us on their fundraising progress. That's it for now.
That's it for now. Thank you for that report. Councillor Hahn?
I did have some questions for the mayor. Apparently I won't be able to ask those as he's opted to leave the building. But I will...
Excuse me, Councillor Hahn, if perhaps you could just lean a little bit closer to your microphone. You're quite faint.
Okay.
Thank you.
I had some questions. Is that better?
That's a bit better. Thank you.
Okay, I had some questions for the mayor, but he's left the meeting, so I'm not able to ask those, and he's not able to answer those. So I'll just proceed. Although the mayor was informed by multiple councillors, including myself, that his actions were improper and should be brought forward in open council, he continued to not act with transparency in his dealings and thus obstructed the municipal code of conduct. As the mayor has more experience in politics than any other councillor, he ought to have known better. It is important that the head of council lead by example. Council has endeavored to work towards remedying the negative effects from cannabis operations that have affected many residents in our town. The Cannabis Control Committee continues to do important work to help us achieve our goals. The mayor ought to have known that by asking CanTrust and other cannabis operations, who also have litigation against the town, to offer their monetary donations for any cause could be perceived negatively by residents and perhaps put the town in a precarious future legal position. I believe a penalty of 45 days remuneration suspension and a letter reprimand is appropriate for these code of conduct violations. I do hope that the mayor has learned from this investigation and outcome and will move forward without reservation towards the councillor that filed this claim with the ethics commissioner. Nobody should ever be penalized or feel effects of retribution because they blew the whistle and spoke up for what is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hahn. Is that the completion of your report?
Yes.
I thank you so much, councillors. Now I'd like to make my comment. Having read the report carefully, I agree with both the findings and recommendations. The mayor made errors, but I don't believe the errors were made out of self-interest or personal profit in mind. We aren't sweeping this under the rug, and we aren't ignoring it. Everything to do with cannabis has been tough on this town, as it is the #1 issue that this council has been addressing with the CCC committee. I'm saddened about what I hear tonight. I have great respect for the mayor's office, but I think it is clear that the mayor tried to keep what had the potential to be a municipal business from public eye, and is simply not acceptable. I'm worried that based on the statements made tonight, the information provided, that he has not learned the lesson he is supposed to, and Pelham deserves better than that. Moving forward, I would support the motion that Councillor Hahn has suggested. Would any councillor like to make further comment?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we don't have a second on that motion.
Through you, Councillor Stewart, are you the second?
Thank you. I'll take Councillor Stewart as the second. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, did you wish to call for discussion on the motion? And the motion would be by Councillor Hahn and Councillor Stewart to issue a penalty of 45 days suspension of the mayor's remuneration and a letter of reprimand to be appropriate in this instance.
Would any councillor like to make a comment with regards to that motion? Councillor Wink?
Yes, so I think Councillor Hahn put it out earlier that we're fairly new councillors to this. We've never experienced a breach of the code of conduct or any breach of any clause in the municipal act. We have an experienced integrity commissioner who has been dealing with this for several years, and his recommendation to this council is a reprimand. He states that while there was breaches, they weren't serious breaches. There wasn't personal gain as a result. He stated that the mayor made an error in judgment. And his recommendation, based on his professional opinion, is a reprimand. Nothing to do about suspension of remuneration paid by the mayor. And I will not support anything further than a reprimand to the mayor. Hey, you've got the chair.
I understand. I was just making sure that I could see the clerk and that she was ready. My concern is, from the statement that I heard from the mayor tonight, I was hoping there would be a more apologetic and conciliatory position taken by the mayor. To me, the mayor did not take that position. He took the position that what he did seemed to be right. And that to me is the reason why I will support that motion.
So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, are you ready for me to call the vote on the motion for the 45-day suspension of pay and the letter of reprimand?
Yes, Madam Clerk. Unless another councillor, I'd like to give the councillors one more chance to speak to the issue if they'd like. Seeing none, please proceed.
Oh, Councillor Hahn has her hand up.
Councillor Hahn?
Through you, Chair. My understanding is that, and these are some of the things I would have liked to have the opportunity to speak to the mayor, but again, he's left. So I would have asked him, his rationale I understood for stepping down from his previous term in council was because he believed things were not transparent. And yet the evidence now shows that he was not being transparent in his actions here. So, that goes to why I've chosen that, and the fact that he's opted to leave the meeting and doesn't seem to have any apologies to make whatsoever. Had he had the opportunity, or had I had the opportunity with him to discuss this, it may have had a different outcome, but clearly he has no remorse and no apologies to make. So this leaves me with the motion that's now on the floor, and so I'm in a position now to vote if there's not any other comments, I suppose.
Thank you, Councillor Hahn. Councillor Stewart?
Yes, further to what Councillor Hahn just said, the mayor did say that he's written a piece for the paper for tomorrow with an apology, but he made no apology to council for putting us in the position that we're in, where this information was held back from us, and it only came out probably because it was going to be brought forward by the Ban Shell Committee to give us an indication of their money raising venture, and otherwise we might not have known. And therefore, I do believe that, more than a letter of reprimand is important in this case.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Hahn?
I would like to add something else, Mr. Chair, and that is with regards to the earlier comments that the mayor made, which again, I would like to have talked to him further about, and that is with regards to the cost of this investigation. Unfortunately, yes, there is a cost, but the cost came because these actions by the mayor were taken. Had the code of conduct not been breached or assumed to be breached and needed to be investigated, we wouldn't be in a position to have to pay for the legal intervention by way of an investigation. So as far as mediation, in order to have mediation, you have to have two parties that one of them has to admit, or both really have to have a compromise. They have to admit that there's some wrongdoing. In this case, the mayor very clearly doesn't believe he's done anything wrong. So mediation really didn't seem like it would have been anything that would have ever been feasible. So naturally then, instead of mediation, it goes to an investigation. Investigation has a fee to that. So in the future, again, like I mentioned, I hope that the mayor has learned from this, and it would have been much different outcome, I think, if we would have had the opportunity to have a proper discussion at this very time, but he's chosen not to take that route.
Thank you, Councillor Hahn. Any further discussion by members of the council? Councillor Wink?
Yeah, so I'll support what Councillor Hahn was saying, that the mayor left the meeting abruptly, wasn't around to address any questions that council had. The fact that, to Councillor Stewart's point, that he did not make an apology to to council. He's making an apology through the newspaper to the citizens of the town, but he's got to report to council. So I will support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wink. Are members of council, are we prepared to vote at this time?
Yes.
So
Madam
through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, this is on the motion presented by Councillor Hahn and Councillor Stewart. Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor Hildebrand?
Yes.
The motion carries. And we still have a motion to receive the report from the Integrity Commissioner. So I will call the question on that. Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
The motion carries. Mr. Deputy Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the confirming bylaw. Are you ready for me to present the confirming bylaw?
Yes, please, Madam Clerk.
On a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed, being bylaw 4248 of 2020, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 15th day of June, 2020. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
The motion carries. The final motion, members of council, is the motion to adjourn. Councillor Hahn, moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for July 13th, and that will be at 6:30 p.m. There is a change in time for that meeting, as council will recall. And the vote, Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
The motion is carried. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Right.
you.
Good night.